Good afternoon, first graders, and happy Friday. We made it to the end of the week, and that is definitely something worth celebrating. But before we wrap up for our weekend, I have a pretty awesome read aloud for you all. And this book is called Schools Around the World by Eleanor O'Connell. And this book, as we read it, we're going to go all around the world to different countries and to different cultures. And we're going to learn what going to school is like there. And so as we read this book, I hope you learn something. I hope you find some similarities. And I hope you find some cool differences too. So let's jump right in. Time for school. Some schools around the world might look different than yours. Students there might dress a bit differently too. As you read this book, imagine what it's like to go to school in these interesting places. Did you hear the bell? I think it's time for school. School boats. Much of the country of Bangladesh, which is in South Asia, it floods during their rainy season. And that means many schools flood too. Students miss classes and can get behind in their studies because of this flooding. So some people thought of a way to solve this problem. Floating schools. It's a pretty interesting concept. So look here, we have some kids and our teacher. And this building, well, it's not really a building, it's a boat. Boat schools mean students can go to class all year round. The boats even pick up students just like a school bus. Some boats have computers powered by the sun. That is solar energy. Wow, that's really cool. Boat schools can be found in Cambodia, Nigeria, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Zambia too. So there are many different countries that use these boat schools. And here on the right page, we have a picture, and it looks like a couple friends are on their way to school. They're walking across this ladder or bridge, and they're going right to class. Bus classrooms. You might take a bus to school. Now imagine if your classroom was a bus. There's a school in Shanghai, China, that made a bus into a classroom. And the fun idea came from a children's book. And it's a great way to recycle a bus too. And we all know how important recycling is. So look at this picture. They're on a bus, so you can see them all in their bus seats. And we have the teacher up front here. And so they're teaching a lesson, and it's just like a big, long classroom. Wow. That's interesting. Computers to go. In some remote areas of Africa, students don't have access to the internet and computers. So now there were two bold words in that sentence, remote and access. So remote means very hard to get to. They're very out of the way or isolated by themselves. And access. So that means to use something or to have the ability to use something. So they don't have access to internet or the computers. It's not really around them. So they've been using other things to get by instead of the internet and computers. People have made large shipping containers into computer labs for these places. Trucks can easily move the containers to a new place when needed. So that's a solution they came up with. Since they don't have much access or the ability to use the internet or computers. So they used shipping containers, and those are essentially really, really big boxes that they use to ship things on boats and also on trucks. And they made these huge boxes into computer labs, portable computer labs that they can move wherever they're needed. And here's a picture of that shipping container here. So you can see a person inside using the computer. And I think there's another one in the shadow over there using the computer as well, another person. And a satellite dish, and that helps them get internet for their computers. Open air schools. In some places, there aren't enough buildings for schools. In Afghanistan, for example, schools have been destroyed by years of war. So children often gather in open air schools to learn. Sometimes they hold a class in tents to hide from the sun or the rain. So in Afghanistan, since many buildings have been destroyed, they gather outside for their classes. But when it's too hot or the weather isn't good, sometimes they'll put up a tent so that they can be covered. But as you can see in our picture here, we have a lot of students sitting outside, and it looks like a lot of them have questions because they have their hands up. So I wonder what they have to say. What they wear. Many schools in Africa require students to wear uniforms. However, it's not uncommon to see students walking long ways to and from school barefoot. Sometimes they do this to make their shoes last longer. So there are a couple interesting things on this page. First, that many schools in Africa require students to wear uniforms. That's very similar to here in America. There are a lot of schools in America that also make students wear uniforms. And I think it is very clever that these students often will walk to and from school barefoot. So that way they can make their shoes last longer and stay cleaner for longer too. So it's very resourceful. They're being very careful with their shoes. Even in uniforms, students may show their culture in special ways. And I think that's true in America as well. Even though some schools have uniforms, I think we all express our culture in special ways. And even in schools that don't have a uniform, like ours, or we're virtually learning at home and we're wearing what we want to wear, I think we express our culture in that way too, where we express ourselves through our clothes and by wearing things that we like. In the Southeast Asian country of Myanmar, students sometimes wear thanaka on their face. Thanaka is a yellowish paste made from bark, and it guards the skin from sunburn. So here we have two young ladies with thanaka on their face, and so this serves two really cool purposes. First, it helps them express their culture and their identity. And secondly, it works similar to sunblock in that it guards their skin from sunburn. That's really cool. I've never seen this type of face paint, the thanaka, before. That's awesome. School's out. In the southern hemisphere, summer is from December until March. So students in countries there, such as Brazil, have their summer vacation during this time. And that's interesting because in the northern hemisphere where we are, our summer is from, March through August. It's really kind of the opposite. So it's pretty cool that while we're suffering through winter, it's their summer. That's really interesting. And so this asks us a few questions now. Would you like to go to a school in a different country? Which one out of all the ones we've read about so far would you like to go to? And it's okay if you have multiple answers too. I found a lot of them really cool. And lastly, why did you pick the school that you picked? So let's think about it for a minute. And then maybe during a closing circle or a morning meeting, we can share our thoughts. All right, my friends, so that is the end of our book. But before I hit the pause button and stop this video, let's check out our glossary on that page. So our first word, access, and that's a way of being able to use or to get something. Bark is the outer layer of a tree. Culture, this is the beliefs and a way of life of a people, group, or place. Hemisphere is one half of the earth. And as we learned, schools in places like Brazil or Australia on the southern hemisphere, their seasons are opposite. So during our winter, they have summer. And of course, we are in the northern hemisphere, in New York and in Brooklyn. Remote is far away from other people, houses, or cities. And lastly, shipping container, which is a large box that goods are placed in so that they can be moved from one place to another on a ship, airplane, train, or truck. Well, everybody, that was a really informative and cool book. I thought it was awesome learning about all the similarities and differences and some of the very unique things about all these schools around the world. Well, I will see you all later. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.